So we're going to continue giving you delicious nuggets of insights and inspiration around empowering differences. But for now, we're going to do what will literally be a fireside chat. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Watching Good Morning America.
Yes.
Okay. Ashley, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for not just the person that you are and the work that you've done, but for how you have allowed me, my family, and the world that I hope to inspire to become our own version of your book. If it were not for you, I can't imagine how I would have been able to get through not just specific situations, but you have shown me with grace and sophistication and a little dash of tenacity what it takes to create real meaningful change. So I'm happy to be able to have this conversation with you. So let's talk about empowering differences. Now, you know I'm a fan, and you know I love this book for many reasons. And it's not just you, not just your charm and charisma.
It's what the world needed right
It's
now.
what it is. This book is what the world needs right now. So here's the problem. The problem is that we think we know how to empower differences. And we probably did like 5 years ago. 5 years ago. Yeah, oh, you've got freckles, were you ever made fun of for having red hair?
Oh my goodness.
So
many times.
Can you remember, what was it like when that was the most defining feature of your personal brand?
I just think about the fact that I grew up with red hair, braces, glasses, and just was awkward. And it was so difficult.
And so do you think that those are the kinds of things that hold us back?
I think it depends on how you think of it. And the framing is what really matters. And that's what really leads to true empowerment for others, is when you think about the things that are different about you. And that could be anything, right? And I know that that like my sample size and my target demo, right, is of course our LGBTQ population. But it's so much more than that. Like, these concepts and these principles really are about connecting to change. And what someone may see as your biggest weakness is actually really your secret biggest strength.
Yeah.
Is the whole concept of this movement.
There's something that you said that I want to reinforce. It would be very easy to peg you into a category, the LGBTQ plus category. But here's the deal. You're preaching to the choir if this book, if for readers of the book, you have a much bigger vision. People who already understand what it means to have a difference aren't necessarily the only target audience for the book. It's people who don't understand.
Right.
It's people who say, well, I hear we have difference and I kind of get it. I mean, you know, he's blonde and she's redhead, but they don't really fundamentally understand how that's a benefit and what to do with it, not just legally, but moving forward with what it takes to have a modern, successful operation. So talk about, if I come to you and I say, you know, I don't really need a book on empowering differences because I'm an HR manager. So I know my demographics. I know I need to hire somebody with this job title, this job title, this job title. How can you slice through job titles and start to really get fundamentally deeper difference?
I think that the biggest connection point that's going to really create the change for that HR manager is the development piece. Because you can hire all the great talent that you want in your organization, but if you're not really teaching them the empowerment, which is going to then lead them to developing their career and their future, then that's going to be an issue. So that's really why this book was designed to meet that specific need around connecting and leading with empowerment for the future. Because the development piece that connects to the other parts of empowering differences is what's really going to be super powerful.
May I tell a personal story?
Yes, please. I think that's why we really want to hear.
I have always believed different is better than better. I've always believed that what makes us different is more important than what makes us better. And I learned this through advertising. In advertising, the greatest brands don't focus on trying to be better. They try to identify what makes them different. I had a personal experience in which I learned that somebody in my family was transgender. And I really had to stop and step back and try to understand, okay, there's different as in Coke is different than Pepsi, but then there's different as in how do I keep my kid from getting bullied? And so the very first person that I called was Ashley. And do you remember this call? It was October 12th. October 12th of 2000.
I think you Facebooked me first.
I did.
And I thought that was like a handler Facebook.
Oh.
But it really wasn't
No,
you.
No, it was like a clingy mom. And I was like, we haven't really met, and I really need your help, and I have no idea what to do. I think I was very hands off at first because it was so new to me that typing the word transgender in a message that would go on Facebook was scary.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't something that I knew I could own yet.
It almost felt permanent.
Almost did. And turns out it was. and that I called you, and you, first of all, you took my call, thank you. And that you said there are a lot of different ways you can understand what's going on, but what nobody's going to give you are the action steps. People will tell you why it's okay, but they're not going to tell you what to do.
Or they'll tell you it's not okay.
Or not okay.
But they won't tell you necessarily why.
Yeah. Like Google will tell you how to switch pronouns. The actual re-socializing of somebody's identity is completely different. And so I've continued to lean on you over the years. And I feel as though you've always been a lightning rod for me of somebody who is ahead of the conversation. And what's been amazing is I think you were at an earlier point in your journey when I learned that I had a family member who's transgender and that I wanted to be able to support them, that you were earlier in your journey.
I was actually in phase 3 of empowering differences, because there are actually 4 parts to fully empower your differences. And so part 1 is centered around getting to know yourself, because if you don't know yourself, how are you going to help anybody else? I don't know. And then part 2 is about knowing others and knowing the other parts of the community and doing your research so that way you're ready to empower others. Because if you can't talk about the LGBT buying power or how many red hair people exist in society, then you don't really know enough about your community or really know others. And then step 3 was when we connected, when I was in the middle of developing my strategy, because for real true empowerment to happen, you have to really build and develop your own strategy, and it has to be litmus tested against other connections. And that's when you start to build your connections and you then network and you start practicing some of these things that you do, where you've now known more about yourself, you've learned about others, but then what's the right kind of recipe and how you display who you are, all your authenticity.
And the book shows it,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
So earlier we were talking about, can I tell them a story? Okay, so Ashley and her wife Whitney were having a birthday party at on the roof in Tampa. Where was it? It was
Marriott Waterside.
Yeah, fantastic party. But then we were like, it'd be really great. We should have a blender. We should have margaritas. So Whitney whips out her phone and was like, "Do you know Prime Now?" And bam, within 43 minutes, a blender arrived in its original packaging from Prime Now. Less than an hour later, we had full-on margaritas, aka salaritas, because I've got my secret recipe. But that's the kind of thing we need. We need a recipe.
Right.
There were probably 100 people on that deck that sun deck, that swim deck, that wanted a margarita. You and Whitney, you are all about action. And what is the recipe? What are the pieces that it takes?
Yeah.
And I admire you for that.
Well, and I think that everybody has your own right. That goes back to your authenticity. And I'm jokingly in my book refer it to my own Ashleyisms.
Yeah.
I know that you have your own version of
Hogsheadism.
Okay, and everyone should have those. Those are your pieces that really live around and live, breathe, sleep, eat everything you, and that has to be ingrained into everything that you do, and you have to figure out the best mix for that. Yeah.
I have a ton more questions, but let me pause. In a minute, I'm going to be asking if you have questions. Okay, so given the time frame between when the book was finished in roughly October, November, and today, here we are in January. Yeah, the so-called better 2021.
Yes.
This book has become even more essential during the past 6 weeks. Wouldn't you say?
Since this week, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully you have Twitter handles.
Yes. Yeah, I haven't been banned from Twitter. Well, interestingly enough, so much has happened in the last year. I finished this book in June of 2020, and June of 2020, I was waiting for permission to really publish it because I do have another job that I still work at. For those that know me.
Yeah. And can I say, Ashley was instrumental in my small business staying afloat during COVID, because I called Ashley and I was like, "What the f?" And she coached me through it. So the same steps, your action-oriented ability to take a complicated process, a theory, and turn it into actionable steps that you do here in this book, you did with me. So my employees who are still on staff, we thank you.
Awesome. So while I was waiting for that yes to approve, I not only then packaged Empowering Differences as a book, I also then built it as a workbook and an online course, an e-course. And what's so cool about this e-course is it's actually housed right on my website, and it's basically 11 fireside coffee chats with Ashley. It's a video library that you access on your own time, and you have the ability to access the 10 empowering action lessons. So there are 11 lessons. The 11th is the overarching lesson, and then there's 10 lessons that go along with the workbook. And the workbook actually is broken up into 2 parts. So part 1 of the workbook is the self-assessment, because that lives more in that part 1 and part 2.
Yeah, those questions are very much bringing up contemplative ways for you to look at yourself that they haven't necessarily thought of.
Yeah, and I know that sometimes when you pick up a book, and it asks you questions like, are you gonna actually literally take out a pen and write in your book? Not really. It's not really built that way.
But a workbook you would.
But a workbook, and so that's why we built it as a workbook, to really help you do that. And the reason that we've kind of packaged this as an online bundle, and now of course we have printed copies of the workbook if you want, we can totally do those for you, but it's really designed to be that online, it's a fillable PDF that we give you with the course, which helps you to keep it succinct to your Google Drive, so that way you can constantly go back in and answer those questions.
Maybe you keep it by your laptop so that when you have a big insight.
Yeah.
I remember you and you were on a panel one year that I was blown away by how effective and memorable and transformational you were. I think it was NGLCC, National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce in Tampa in 2019, where it was Sunday morning, 8 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I walked in, and the room was present but shy. It hadn't really warmed up yet. And you brought the points into such salience and into the moment. You made it real, because there was discussion about theoretical, abstract issues.
What we actually have to do to empower our community.
Yes. Yeah, so you can talk about that. Well, what we should do, what we could do, and you were
This is what
no
needs to happen.
bitches. Here's what we need to do. Yeah, and I think that approach is what has allowed you to break through when other people have tried to tackle this topic of not just diversity, but to try to take it as a mindset.
Well, and you brought up a couple of key points here that I want to mention really quickly. Is number one, well, the most recent one, diversity. It's like we call it diversity and inclusion, and I know that there's been a big movement happening lately around kind of navigating those words differently. Diversity in its own right, is really just differences. And so if you run a program that's based just on differences, like it has to be so much more than that, right? Really the inclusion, the equity,
right.
the belonging, the empowerment.
Diversity is like the separation, and the inclusion is.
Yeah, let's focus on that. Like why we would ever name our job or our job function lead with the word diversity is not good.
Yeah.
Right? It should be the other word first. Like the way you position these words really matter, and you have to be purposeful in that. But I think that the other point that I was going to make too is stemming around these actions and how you use them. So
are there 10 or 11 actions?
10. Because 10's an even number.
Yeah, right.
And of course, I probably could have chosen like 30 to list, but then no one would ever remember all of them. So 10 actions, the 10 empowering actions. And to tell you the truth, you'll realize this when you start reading through the book, but there's a reason that they're in the order that they're in. And it's actually really, really purposeful that they're in this order. And then depending on your diversity, there's also a suggested order that you use these actions to help you grow in your career. And that's what's going to be happening over the next year and a half, is I will have the ability to share out these orders of the 10 differences. So there are also 10 common differences that are discussed in chapter 3 in this book. And those differences, you'll see, have connectivity around how you utilize these 10 empowering actions. So a real world example.
Yeah, right.
Real world examples.
Yeah.
So like for me, when I was looking for employment, trying to survive, battling homelessness with 4 mouths to feed, I didn't know where we were going to end up. And I needed to find a new career. Now, I could find a job, but I really wanted a new career where I knew that inclusion was important. And I showed up at these job interviews, and I started leading with education. And you'll notice that education is one of the 10 empowering actions. But I led with education, and that was great. And it led to me sitting in that interview chair a little bit longer, but it wasn't leading to any job offers. So education was important, but it wasn't in the right order, leading with education. So then I started leading with inspiration. And now I could have a little bit of education, a little bit of inspiration, and the person that was interviewing me was intrigued.
Yeah.
And
I can imagine.
And that
you education, you inspiration, I'm in.
And then that was leading to a longer conversation, second interviews, dialogue, intrigue, but not job offers.
What did it?
The empowerment.
Cuban is hanging. Oh.
I had to lead with empowerment to really break through and be able to use then the inspiration and the education. But by using empowerment, inspiration, and education in that order was what actually really led to the enlightenment. And you'll notice that enlightenment is the last of the 10 empowering actions.
I did notice that.
And that's why, because real true enlightenment happens, and that's the last domino that will fall in your mission of empowerment. Because, and then so real world example, in this job interview, I'd be sitting there talking about my diversity, right, my differences, but I would talk about the buying power of the LGBTQ community before I would talk about my diversity.
Oh.
So I would say, I would say, oh, well, I was thinking that it would be really great for your organization to market to the approximately 2 million transgender people that live in the United States. And the fact that I knew that there was about 2 million trans people in the United States, according to the UCLA Institute, Williams Institute, right? Then I could know that, and I could extrapolate that and communicate that to the person making that decision. That way they know that I'm going to be that key that helps them connect to the business side. Because
right.
It's the business.
It's decision maker.
Yes.
Now there's a direct line to the dollar amounts.
The dollars.
And I think that's an interesting intersection between you've had a very personal experience, a transition that comes from within you that allows you to have certain benefits to people who would work with you, but then you've got this extraordinary corporate career of being a, may I say, badass with things you've accomplished and what you can do. You know, when you get involved in a project, here's what I noticed. When you get involved in a project, people whip into place and they are more likely to stand up because they are empowered. They're more likely to take action because they're educated. And they're more likely to remember and talk because they're inspired. So that trifecta that you talked about being empowered, inspired, and educated is something that we can all follow when we're trying to get any kind of mission.
Yeah.
You know, like I've got this kid named Asher, you know, if he doesn't always clean up his socks, and so I can be like, Asher, I'm gonna educate you. Dirty socks are yucky. I'm going to inspire you. I'll give you $1 if you clean up your room. I'm going to empower you. If you don't clean up your room, you ain't going out tonight. So it works like that, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So tell us this. What is the number one thing we can do to support when we take this? We're taking, this is a...
That's your copy too.
This is a souvenir. So imagine I have this. What is the greatest way that I can use this as not just a book, but a transformation?
Yeah.
What can I do? How do I do it?
So a couple of things. Obviously, definitely connect this to the course. So what I've done is I've actually packaged it all as a bundle during the launch period. And the course itself, which if you were to take a leadership course, right, you'd spend hundreds of dollars on a leadership course or even more, right?
Yeah. Oh, no question. Okay. No, a leadership course. Right. A fellowship course is $100. A leadership course. How to be a follower.
Right. So.
No, this is a steal.
Yeah. So
this is what you have learned and practiced and put in place. It's your proprietary system that you have developed, not only as somebody who's living in the world of being different and empowering other people who are being different, but you know, PNC is a pretty good litmus test for what works.
Yeah. And so I have that packaged as a bundle, and I'm doing it at like 75% off right now, so it's only $49, which is a steal.
Who has $49 to empower somebody?
We do.
Yes?
Yeah.
Raise your hand. Okay.
So that's step one, and then step two is I'm actually building a community on Facebook, so you can ask to join the Empowering Differences community. And that's going to be a great resource for how you work to empower differences. And that's going to be kind of that next step. And then from that point forward, you know, you all are close friends and loved ones. So we need a lot of Amazon reviews.
You know what, I think it would be fair to say that if somebody buys a book at this ridiculous discount that you're offering, and it's just sort of an honor system, leave a review, and it doesn't mean they have to leave a good review. I mean, they have to leave an authentic review. Right. And hopefully I expect
if I didn't do my job, please call me out on it. But yeah, honestly, to tell you the truth, yeah, not just Amazon, but any of the major bookseller websites, you don't actually have to buy from them to leave a review, which is kind of neat. And as you know, right? And but yeah, that would be really helpful. And then you know, build your connection, share it with your sphere is amazing. And then as you start to realize, you know, the place that you work at, if you think that this might be a good book club to do, those are always very helpful for me. book clubs are amazing ways to get your word out. And then also I sell that leadership course to major corporations. I have a few companies that I'm in negotiation with right now around the leadership development course. And yeah, just keep helping me. I obviously want to help you. And I do have one special announcement during the book launch period, is that 10% of all the proceeds from the book sales are being donated to GLAAD.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
Yeah.
let me ask you a question. So, Kelly, have you ever
Wow,
worked
we're
in a
calling you.
situation when you felt like that you were imprisoned from being different, where who you were was not only not good enough, but it was outright wrong? Have you ever felt that way?
Yes. And well, yeah, quite a few times, right? But
Would you want to have a framework? Would you want to have given your manager, your company, your boss, or maybe your team a framework for how to allow you to be the best Kelly that you are?
having that laid out would have made it much easier.
Mm.
Even though I figured it was really complex, it was very difficult, I figured out a way, but me, right, we're kind of like-minded to a degree, but then having a roadmap would have been much easier. For sure.
Kirby, you're a corporate attorney, top Duke University graduate. Have you ever been in a job in which you felt as though differences were not only stifled but became a liability?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, I think that the sort of cliche that people hire in their own image causes a lot of that. And so if you don't fit that, it's very, very difficult, you know, especially with lawyers. Law firms are like the worst of that. So yeah, it's definitely true, unfortunately. But there's also a lot of people who, are open-minded, free thinkers that intentionally hire people different from them because they know that if you have all fullbacks on a team, you're not going to score a goal. You need to have some forwards and some goalies. So, that also works. So.
Just like a 3-sport
I
reference
know.
in one.
So if you were drinking white wine, now shift over to red,
Yeah.
because we are empowering differences. And I, from the bottom of my heart, I'm thrilled that you're here, but most importantly, I'm thrilled they are here. I'm glad you're here, but this, I feel like, is a gift to the world that we need right now. There's never been a time when we needed to understand how to empower differences. And I loved going through and dog-earing, coffee staining, post-it noting, margin writing on this. So I'm gonna stand in line and I'm gonna get a signed copy for 10 of my friends.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for being there for me.
Ashley, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Oh,
my goodness.
but of
yes.
course.
So we've talked a lot about, you've talked a lot about career building and career change and shifts that are gonna be necessary and forthcoming. What about for those individuals who aren't quite there in their career process?
Yeah.
And she's Girl Scout, she's driven, she's forward thinking, but where do you think she's gonna fall into this particular text?
I think that is a great lesson because I've been actually having my oldest son read the book and connect with the information. He's 15 because the more information, right, that you acquire at an earlier age and understand all the things about you, right, because you're still growing and learning your own right, you can keep doing steps 1 through 4 of empowering your differences at any point. And honestly, there's been times where I start back at step 1, even though I know who I am, but things change. Like you go through every time you go through a new life event is a new time that you can go back at the beginning of this process and go back to looking at yourself holistically. Because those questions that you ask in this self-assessment can change over time.
Sure.
So that's what's so great about having it as a PDF document in essence, because you can just make a new version and then re-ask yourself that question in a year or 2 years from now, because it will change.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how you see the world changes very often throughout so many cycles. So I think it's really important to definitely start that process now, because knowing yourself and knowing others, right, the people that you know now change over time as well. So all of those things will start in your journey, and it will help you to be a better communicator. It'll help you in leadership for all the things that you volunteer for now, right? Because they may change, those things change as you grow. So I think that definitely makes it super relevant.
Thank you.
Yeah.